Camilla's private emails about Princess Kate have leaked, and palace staff are horrified. The tone? Cold, strategic, void of compassion. Described as a calculated memo, the emails reduced Kate's health struggle to a PR issue. Inside the palace, trust has shattered, and now the fallout has begun. Camilla's private emails about Kate leak. Palace staff left reeling. It began in silence. No headline, no whisper, just a quiet thread of internal emails, allegedly written by Queen Camilla, that began to circulate behind palace walls. The content, shocking. The tone, ice cold. Multiple insiders confirmed that these emails, sent within Clarence House, directly addressed Catherine, Princess of Wales, and her absence from public life due to medical reasons. But there was no concern, no care, only strategy. One senior staffer said it plainly. This wasn't concern, it was calculation. The emails reportedly analyzed Kate's absence as a visibility issue, referencing long-term optics and the stability of female representation at public events. For those who read them, the implications were clear. Kate's well-being was being discussed like a PR liability. A private secretary from Kensington Palace said in disbelief, "It read like a corporate briefing, not family correspondence." But what stunned staff most wasn't how the emails got out. It was that they hadn't gone to the press. They had leaked within the palace itself. Between aides, departments, screens, there was no media frenzy yet, but something had already broken. "It was like we were breathing in betrayal," said one longtime courtier. "Not from outside, but from one of our own." Within 24 hours, palace staff went silent. Emails stopped, doors closed. The hush was loud. Camilla's name was spoken only in guarded tones, often followed by a pause. Something had shifted, deeply. What the emails allegedly contained, language that crossed a line. The emails weren't angry, they were worse, cold. Staff who saw them said they read like documents from a corporate strategist, not the wife of the monarch. In one email, Kate's recovery was called a prolonged disruption. Another expressed worry over public fatigue and the need for optical continuity, a clear reference to Camilla's own visibility. Nowhere in the chain, reportedly spanning weeks, was there any expression of sympathy. No, "We hope she's healing." No, "This must be hard for her children." Instead, bullet points, headers, lists. One of the most disturbing lines read, "We must consider stabilizing female presence." For staff, that was a direct suggestion to reframe Camilla as the dominant female royal figure in Kate's absence. A senior press aide admitted, "It sounded like someone trying to edge her out, not hold space for her." This wasn't just one careless email. This was a structured conversation, looped into by communications teams, schedulers, and event planners. Not a single person from Kate's medical detail was included. "It was too polished to be an accident," said a digital coordinator at Clarence House. And that's what made it frightening. Staff began to talk, quietly, carefully, and the tone was unanimous. The line hadn't just been crossed, it had been erased. How the emails were discovered, an internal system breakdown. The discovery happened by accident, but its impact was seismic. During a routine IT migration at Clarence House, a junior systems analyst noticed strange routing paths tied to archived internal emails. At first, it looked like a sorting error. Messages tagged under administrative routing had strange subject lines like Q2 engagement stabilization and female optics planning. But when one message appeared to discuss Kate's absence in strategic terms and was forwarded to communications aides instead of health liaisons, it triggered red flags. A senior IT official confirmed these weren't hacked. They were forwarded, but they weren't going to the people you'd expect, and that told us everything. The emails had bypassed private family aides and went instead to the PR apparatus of the monarchy. That pattern was deliberate and deeply unsettling. Within hours, Kensington Palace was alerted. Phones rang. Meetings were cancelled. Every email related to Catherine was pulled into a secure review. One insider said, "This wasn't a leak, it was a mirror, and no one liked what they saw in it." Containment began immediately. Staff were told to avoid internal correspondence regarding the topic. Digital access was locked down. Verbal-only briefings became the norm overnight. Inside, the silence grew louder, and the emotion began to rise. Staff reaction, horrified, is the word repeated most. When more staff finally read the emails, the reaction was not confusion, it was nausea. Horrified was the word repeated by every level of palace staff, from senior aides to transport coordinators. Some refused to reply. Others asked to be removed from the copy list. One staff member, close to tears, said, "It felt like a betrayal of everything we stand for." Palace aides are trained for pressure. They're used to scandal. But this wasn't a media crisis. It was internal, and it involved someone many of them loved deeply. Catherine. "She always checks in on birthdays. She sends handwritten notes. She knows our names," said a housekeeping staffer from Sandringham. "She's never acted like she's above us." The contrast between Kate's warmth and the tone of the emails was unbearable. A veteran member of Queen Elizabeth II's household remarked, "This is the kind of coldness we saw in Diana's day. We promised ourselves we'd never go back there." The emotional drop was immediate. Staff who once proudly wore pins and badges from Catherine's events removed them. There were murmurs, unspoken but everywhere, that something had broken. Trust, once lost, doesn't return quietly. Why this hit harder? Kate's condition and vulnerability. What made this different, what made it worse, was Kate's condition. She wasn't absent by choice. She was recovering from a medical issue, shielded from the public at Prince William's request. Only a small group knew the details, carefully guarded. To see that private pain reduced to a footnote in optic strategy shattered the emotional line. A senior aide said, "She didn't ask for sympathy, she asked for privacy, and even that wasn't respected." Staff across departments, from Windsor to Kensington, reacted with a kind of grief, not because a scandal had emerged, but because they realized someone close had allowed this tone to happen, and worse, to circulate. "She has given everything, dignity, patience, loyalty," said an assistant who's worked with Kate for 12 years. And they treated her absence like a media inconvenience. Even staff unfamiliar with her day-to-day work felt it. A palace footman admitted, "I've only met her twice, but I wanted to defend her." It wasn't about favoritism, it was about humanity. And that was what the emails had stripped away. Behind the scenes, as whispers turned to clenched silence, one figure prepared to act: Prince William. And when he was finally told, everything changed. William is informed, and the temperature changes instantly. It happened late. Behind a locked door at Kensington Palace, Prince William was briefed by 2 senior aides. He read the emails without interruption. No pacing, no visible anger, just silence. Then he asked one question: who was copied? That question, and the way he asked it, chilled the room. From that moment, internal communication between Kensington Palace and Clarence House froze. Shared schedules were paused. Standing calls between offices were cancelled. Teams that had once worked hand in hand fell quiet. Something had shifted, and everyone felt it. An insider close to the meeting said, "He didn't yell, he didn't threaten, but his silence said more than anything I've ever heard him speak." William, known for his composed temper and measured discipline, showed no visible signs of rage. But his message was clear. This was not going to be forgotten. The emails hadn't just insulted Kate. They had strategized her. And William, fiercely protective of her even in normal times, saw what others hadn't, that someone inside the palace had treated his wife's pain like a political void. The Prince of Wales reportedly ordered a complete stop on all cross-household planning discussions related to public duties. He didn't argue with Charles. He didn't issue statements. He simply closed the door. A royal source admitted, "When William retreats, it's not silence, it's preparation." And from that moment, the emotional tone of the monarchy began to divide. One side cold and calculating, the other heartbreakingly human. Charles caught in the middle. Damage control begins. King Charles was informed within the hour. He was at Highgrove House, expecting a quiet evening. Instead, he received a full report summarizing the emails and William's reaction. The king reportedly paused for several minutes before responding. When he did, he asked a calm but pointed question. Was it poor wording or poor intent? That distinction mattered, not just to him, but to the future of how this crisis would be managed. According to palace aides, Charles was deeply unsettled, but chose not to react publicly. Instead, he convened a series of quiet meetings with his private secretaries and legal team. He then issued an internal order. All family-related digital correspondence would be reviewed. From now on, emails concerning medical or personal matters must go through clearance. It was damage control, but done discreetly, in the Crown's time-worn fashion. A veteran courtier reflected, "Charles believes in shields. His instinct is always to protect the institution first." But the king was also reportedly visibly tired of rifts, of managing family fractures with royal gloves. He understood that this wasn't just a misstep, it was a crack in unity. While Camilla remained silent publicly, behind the scenes, there were questions. Did she know how the emails sounded? Was she aware of their distribution? Was it strategy or oversight? None of those answers came, and Charles, caught between son and queen, chose what the crown always chooses when lines are blurred: silence. But inside the palace, that silence was not safety. It was pressure, and it was only growing. The leak risk: why the palace is terrified. This was no longer just an emotional rupture. It had become a containment emergency. The moment the emails began circulating beyond their original recipients, senior aides knew the situation had crossed a dangerous line. This wasn't about hurt feelings anymore. It was about uncontrolled exposure, with consequences that could ripple far beyond the palace gates. Legal and PR teams were pulled into urgent, closed-door meetings inside Buckingham Palace. Screens lit up with audit logs, distribution paths, access histories. Screenshots had already been taken. Copies had already been saved. There had been no hack, no whistleblower. But as one royal IT officer put it, it wasn't leaked, just loose. And that's sometimes worse. The palace feared a repeat of the Diana era, when private pain became public ammunition. But this time, the danger wasn't from an outsider. It was from within. written in the Crown's own voice. And the tone? Damning. If the emails reached the press, with their clinical detachment and absence of compassion, it would rupture what little remains of the monarchy's emotional credibility. Behind the scenes, aides reviewed legal options. Could the emails be verified if leaked? Could the palace deny intent? But it became clear the legal risk wasn't the true threat. The emotional optics were. If the public saw Catherine described not as a woman in recovery, but as a branding disruption, it would trigger a firestorm no amount of tradition could contain. One senior communications aide said, "You can spin a scandal. You can't spin tone." And inside the palace, the tone was infamous, cold, strategic, void of humanity. No mention of her children, no wishes for her health. Just optics, scheduling, control. If those words surfaced, it wouldn't just damage Camilla's image, it would shake the monarchy's moral identity. A former royal advisor put it plainly. This wasn't about one sentence. It was a mindset, and it got caught. Internal protocols were overhauled overnight. Devices banned. Verbal briefings prioritized. Staff reminded that one leak could bring the entire structure down. But no matter how tightly they tried to seal the cracks, one truth remained. The emails existed. And now, so did the risk. Within Clarence's house, paranoia took root. Every aide became a potential leak. Every shared document, a liability. Even silence began to feel dangerous. The fear wasn't just of scandal or headlines. It was of something far more dangerous. The fear of the public reading something that felt true. Because if these emails ever saw daylight, the Crown wouldn't be judged by its speeches, but by what it whispered behind closed doors. And that, above all, was the palace's nightmare. Kate's quiet power. Why sympathy is exploding. Through it all, Catherine said nothing. There was no carefully worded press release, no smiling photo from a car window, no insider tip, no cryptic Instagram post, no soft interview with a friendly journalist. There was only silence. And that silence, in time, became her statement. While internal emails about her were being passed from aide to aide, her name broken down into media strategy and visibility gaps, Kate remained invisible by choice. And in that absence, something extraordinary happened. Public sympathy didn't fade. It grew. It ignited. Not because she reached out, not because she sought it, but precisely because she didn't. She held her ground, quietly and firmly, while the institution around her began to show its cracks. The contrast between Catherine's quiet dignity and the clinical tone of the leaked emails struck a chord with people, both inside and outside the palace. There was no drama in her response. There was no performance, just grace under pressure, and a silence that felt deeply human. A former palace press officer put it this way: "She's the one everyone wants to protect now. Even people who weren't paying attention to her before. They see it. They feel it." The silence made her more visible than any headline could have. Inside the palace, the effect was even more profound. Staff who had worked with Catherine for years, some for over a decade, felt a line had been crossed. But more than that, they felt a duty to draw one now, a moral boundary that had nothing to do with protocol and everything to do with loyalty. "She's not just a royal," said a senior housekeeper from Sandringham. "She's kind. She remembers our children's names. She notices when we're tired. She treats us like people, not parts of the machine." So, when someone treats her like she's disposable, we feel it like it's personal. It wasn't just about affection, it was about respect. Catherine had earned it quietly, year after year, not through speeches or campaigns, but through consistency. Through the small things, the handwritten thank you notes, the gentle smiles in long corridors, the habit of saying thank you, even on her hardest days. And then there was William. His silence, too, became part of this shifting landscape. He didn't speak to the press. He didn't leak stories to correct the record. But the way he cut off communications with Clarence House, the way he narrowed his inner circle after learning of the emails, it spoke volumes. "He didn't say a word," said a Kensington aide, "but he made it clear. His loyalty is to her, not the system, not the spin." The Waleses, once seen as polished and measured, were now revealing something far more powerful: emotional steel. And people noticed. Across social media, news outlets, and private conversations, the tide turned. Hashtags supporting #Princess Catherine trended globally. Editorials shifted tone. Commentators once focused on fashion or appearances began writing about integrity, pain, and protection. A royal historian remarked on a late-night news panel, "Stillness has become her strength, and it's reshaping how the public sees everything, not just her, but the whole monarchy. Because now people are asking, if she's not being protected, who is?" Behind every whisper in the corridors of Kensington Palace, behind every glance between staffers at Clarence House, behind every reshuffled meeting and reworded memo, Catherine's silence is now the loudest voice in the monarchy. It does not plead. It does not retaliate. It endures. And in that endurance, a quiet power is rising, unstoppable, undeniable, and deeply felt. What this means for the monarchy going forward. Something broke, and not just between people, but between institutions. What had long been described as a healthy distance between the royal households of Kensington Palace and Clarence House has now become something harder, colder, and far more permanent. Distrust. Where once there was formality and function, now there is silence. And where there was once cautious cooperation, there are now closed doors and watchful eyes. The leak of the emails, and what they revealed, has triggered a sweeping internal response. New protocols are being drawn up behind the scenes. Internal communications involving family matters are being placed under strict clearance. Only a small circle of vetted aides will be permitted to draft or forward messages that touch on personal well-being, medical leave, or public visibility. What was once handled with soft discretion is now being handled with hard barriers. Within Kensington Palace, there is a quiet but unmistakable shift. Prince William is now expected to assert far greater control over how his family is represented, protected, and spoken of, not just in public, but within the institution itself. A private secretary said simply, "He won't let this happen again, not to Catherine, not to the children, not on his watch." The episode has also prompted deep introspection about Camilla's role behind closed doors. Officially, nothing has changed. There have been no announcements, no formal reprimands, but emotionally, among staff, something is different. There is a growing reluctance to include her voice in sensitive matters, especially those involving the younger generation of royals. One senior aide from Clarence House admitted, "It's not what she said, it's how she said it. It's what wasn't in the message." And now, people are starting to ask, what else don't we see? That quiet questioning has created a subtle power shift. For years, Queen Camilla had been seen as an experienced, stabilizing figure within the firm, someone who knew how to navigate tradition with calm authority. But now, that reputation feels dented. Her behind-the-scenes power, once unquestioned, is now facing resistance, not out of rebellion, but out of principle. There's a sense among staff, particularly the younger aides working under William and Catherine, that the tone of the old guard no longer fits the values of where the monarchy needs to go. A Kensington aide, visibly emotional, said, "William and Catherine represent something different. This proved it. They've earned their loyalty the hard way, by listening, not commanding." The monarchy, of course, doesn't fracture in public. It adjusts in private. It tightens its ranks, redraws its lines, and silently reassigns influence. That is exactly what is happening now. This scandal, though not made fully public, has left its marks. Not on front pages, but in scheduling offices, in inbox filters, in the shift in body language during briefings, and in the kinds of silences that say more than words. One mid-level official from the royal household explained it like this: "You don't always notice when the center of gravity moves, but one day you look around and it's already shifted." That's what's happening now. The monarchy is being reshaped, not through ceremony, but through crisis. And Catherine, who has remained entirely silent throughout, has become the unexpected center of that change. In the weeks that followed, staff began adjusting their tone. Briefings were rewritten with more care. Communications involving the Waleses now pass through a tighter, more protective channel. And internally, loyalty is being measured in new ways, not by hierarchy, but by humanity. As one senior palace official put it in a whisper, standing outside the corridors of Buckingham Palace, the emails didn't just leak words, they leaked the truth. And the monarchy, from the inside out, will never read the same again. This isn't just a leak, it's a reckoning. Behind palace walls, silence is cracking, and loyalty is being tested.